Hi, my name is Russell Axford. I'm the head of executive search at Clarity Recruitment. Today I'm behind the numbers. We have a good friend, Alex Cohen, VP Finance at TREC Brands. Alex, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Alex, so what led you to become the VP Finance at TREC Brands? Tell me a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, I got started at PricewaterhouseCoopers in the audit and assurance route. I got my chartered accounting designation there. From there, I moved on to Element Fleet Management, which was a vehicle fleet financing and services company where I worked in their treasury and strategic projects group. Following that, I joined TREC, where I am VP of Finance and basically oversee the entire finance function.
Awesome. And Alex, when you look at the industry as a whole, I'm seeing acquisitions, I'm seeing consolidation, I've seen success stories. In your opinion, how were those organizations successful where others were not? Where in the value chain are they really focused on?
I think what's going on in cannabis this year and over the past year and a half is very, very interesting. I'm not sure that we're at a stage yet where we can really declare who our winners and losers are. As you mentioned, there's been a ton of acquisition going on in the space. There have also been a number of companies who have shuttered their doors. I think that ultimately right now, the companies who are succeeding are those with healthy balance sheets who have enough kind of cash in the bank to sustain a runway to a position where they become cash flow positive. To add to that, there are a ton of companies in the market who are running out of cash. Those companies are having to go back to the market and raise money at extremely dilutive valuations to existing shareholders. But I think that there are a ton of contributing factors going on in the market related to dealing with provincial boards and all of the pricing mechanisms, understanding consumer tastes and preferences through the legal channel and pulling consumers from the illicit market into the legal channel. The strength of the illicit market, I think, is much stronger than I think licensed producers and investors originally thought. There are a ton of factors at play, and right now, success in this market, I think, is really looking to sustain oneself and to position oneself how they believe, depending on what their thesis is in the market. Obviously, TREC's thesis is there's a big play on brands. There are a ton of consumers who are still consuming the illicit market, and they don't know really one brand from another in the legal channel space. From that perspective, there are, I'm sure, many people who could rhyme off a half dozen draft beers at the local pub, but couldn't really walk into a cannabis retailer and rhyme off 2 or 3 different brands. So I think that's the play that we're making, and that's our thesis. And we're right now focusing on sufficient runway to ensure that we can see that out.
Where do you see the industry going over the next 1 to 3 years?
I think that there will be a lot of winners who manage to consolidate and manage to provide product, a good enough quality product at a reasonable price point that will be able to attract illicit users. Right now, it's estimated that anywhere between 50 to 70% of cannabis consumption in Canada is currently through the illicit market. That's a massive component of the cannabis market that is still not coming through our provincial board consumption. And as a result, I think that the winners in the space will be able to make that compelling case to illicit users to have them walk into a legalized retail store.
Very cool. That's awesome. So going to finance, being the head of finance of a startup, what was that like when you joined?
It's been interesting. So, I was the first person to join the finance function under TREC. I really looked forward to it as I had my opportunity to kind of make my own footprint and make a lasting impression. It was nice to kind of have a blank canvas to be able to put things forward and kind of prioritize things, put systems in place, put the right people in place to ensure that we had, kind of covered everything that was required from a reporting perspective, from a taxation perspective, in terms of planning, all the elements related to strategy and kind of feeding the different department heads in terms of how we could support them in their decision-making process. I think it has been very interesting being part of a startup, which previous to this, I didn't have that experience. There was a lot of support that's required from the finance function. While there are a lot of components that are more so, after the fact, kind of more from a reporting standpoint, there is also the side of the coin that is strategic, and making sure that every party really has an understanding of how what they do impacts the business and impacts effectively our financial statements, and what investors will see, and how that will kind of tell the narrative from a finance perspective.
How much time do you spend wearing the finance hat compared to wearing, the sales hat or the marketing hat, the business partnering hat in a startup that is in growth?
Yeah, that's a really good question. There are definitely times where I am stepping outside of finance to do things that are more, part of sales, part of operations. I think that it's something to expect when joining a startup company, and it's actually one of the things I really quite enjoy. We have a headcount of about 13 people, some of which are related to our sales staff. There are times when we're expanding into new provinces, or there are new retailers opening up, where we have to kind of put down the hats that we regularly wear, and we have to go out and we have to support those functions. And there was an instance where I was out in Alberta a few months ago to really talk to different retailers, get a sense for what product it is that it's moving fastest, and kind of moving at the greatest velocities, and also to pitch our products as well as we expanded it into that province. There are instances where I am on calls with the product development team, and getting them to put in place different asks from our supply partners to ensure that we are taken care of from a payment terms perspective or working capital perspective. I think that there are absolutely instances to expect at a startup you will be working outside of a regular function, and I think it's something that a lot of people, including myself, enjoy.
One last question for you, Alex. What was the biggest challenge for you when you stepped into TREC Brands in your role?
The biggest challenge, I think, was making sure that I had a pulse on everything under the finance function. There's just so much that's going on and so much to be held accountable for. I think that it is easy for someone who maybe doesn't have a certain level of experience or a certain level of bandwidth to just disregard certain things or disregard certain aspects of the role. I think that it was really important to jump in, figure out what's going on in the business, and making sure that we are tackling all aspects, whether it's financial reporting, tax, financial planning and analysis, treasury, on top of all that, strategy, and kind of driving strategy from a finance perspective. I think that it's important to take a step back periodically and understand what is it you're doing, what is it that you are not putting as much focus on, and making sure that you are ticking all those boxes. I think at certain times you can take that step back and make a checklist of everything that needs to be done under your function, and look at what are you neglecting versus what are you spending too much time on. I think a lot of people enjoy things that they're good at and don't enjoy things that they're not good at. And so it's easy for someone who has never spent a lot of time in tax to just disregard it and kind of revisit it once a year when they talk to their tax accountants. But it is the type of thing that if you don't give it enough attention, you will pay for it at a later date.
So I'm guessing you spend a lot of your time on tax. Alex, thanks so much for coming on today and sharing your experience. It was awesome to learn about your journey and learn a little bit more about the industry.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.